You've heard of Bitcoin, right? Of course you have. But what if I told you the real story started a whole decade earlier with an idea almost nobody talks about called B-money? Well, today we're going to fix that. Let's dive in.
So cast your mind back to 2008. The Bitcoin white paper drops, and it feels like it came out of nowhere, right? This completely mind-blowing, revolutionary thing. But did it? Really? The truth is, the seeds for this revolution, they were planted a long, long time before.
All right, so where did this all start? I mean, to really get why Bitcoin was such a big deal, you can't just look at Bitcoin itself. You gotta look at what came before it. Think about it. The biggest, most game-changing ideas, they almost never just pop into existence. They're usually built on the shoulders of giants, you know? They stand on these incredible ideas from people who were maybe just a little too early for their time. And that's exactly where we're going. We're firing up the time machine, but we're not setting the dial to 2008. Nope. We're going all the way back to 1998. The internet was still this kind of clunky new thing, but a handful of brilliant people were already thinking way, way ahead, trying to solve problems most of us didn't even know we had yet. And that brings us right to the heart of our story today, a forgotten blueprint for the future of money, an idea called, simply, B-money. So what was B-money? Well, you can think of it like an architect's sketch. It was a proposal, an idea on paper, for a system of digital cash that was totally anonymous and wasn't run by any bank or government. Instead, it was supposed to be maintained by all its users. Starting to sound a little familiar, isn't it?
The visionary behind all this was a guy named Wei Dai. He was this brilliant computer engineer, and he was part of a group called the cypherpunks. Now, these guys weren't just geeking out on code. They were on a mission. They wanted to use cryptography to protect people's privacy and freedom online. For them, this wasn't just tech, it was about changing the world.
And check out this timeline. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Wei Dai drops his B-money idea way back in 1998, and then crickets for a full decade. It's not until 2008 that Satoshi comes along with Bitcoin. Talk about an idea being ahead of its time. Okay, so we've got the concept, but what did this thing actually look like? I mean, how was it supposed to work? Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Interestingly, Dai actually came up with two different versions. The first one was, well, it was practical. It used a central trusted server to keep track of everything. But the second version, whoa. That was the truly radical one. It imagined a system with no central authority at all, just a network of everyday users keeping the books together. We're going to focus on that second, decentralized version, because this is where things get really interesting. This is where you can almost see the ghost of Bitcoin starting to form. So how would it work? It was basically a three-step dance. Step one, to create new money, you'd have to use your computer to solve some really tough math problems. Sound like mining? Yep. Step two, every time someone sent money, the transaction would be shouted out to the entire network. And step three, everybody on the network would have their own copy of the account book, and they'd all write down that new transaction. Okay, so if B-money was so brilliant, you're probably asking, why have I never heard of it? Why aren't we using it? That is a great question, and it brings us to the last piece of the puzzle, how this amazing idea went from theory to reality. And here's the catch. B-money never actually got off the ground. It was just a theory, a powerful one, but it had this one giant unsolved problem. Imagine a classroom where every student has a copy of the same notebook. If one student writes something down, how do you make absolutely sure every single other student writes the exact same thing in the exact same order at the exact same time, especially with no teacher in the room to double-check everyone's work? That synchronization problem, that was the hurdle Wei Dai couldn't quite clear. But the idea itself, it didn't just disappear. It was just dormant, waiting for someone to crack that final tricky problem. And here's the kicker, the absolute smoking gun that connects everything. Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, they didn't just know about B-money. They explicitly referenced it. They even emailed Wei Dai before Bitcoin went live. The connection is undeniable. I mean, look at this. It lays it all out, plain as day. The idea of a shared ledger in B-money, that becomes the blockchain. The computational work to create money, that becomes proof-of-work mining. The distributed network of users, that's Bitcoin's peer-to-peer network. It's not just a similarity, it's a direct evolutionary line. So really, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. B-money was the blueprint. It was the grand vision, the schematic with all the key parts drawn out. But Bitcoin was the finished building. It was the engineering masterpiece that figured out how to solve that one last incredibly difficult problem, how to get everyone's notebook to match up perfectly, and in doing so, made the whole structure actually work. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? How many other brilliant, world-changing ideas are out there right now, just sitting in some old forum post or a forgotten mailing list, waiting for that one last piece of the puzzle to click into place?